Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here, and the Knicks lost 119 to 108 to the Philadelphia 76ers. Why not splitting up Jalen, Brunson, and Julius Randle more might be costing this team. I've got some numbers to get into and some thoughts on that, as well as some of the other players that played in this game. Why RJ Barrett seemed to be a little bit of a wrongful scapegoat to some people, and more next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell on YouTube, or the subscribe button and the auto download function on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode, because we are here 5 days a week for you guys. I say we. It's been just me, Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Strickland for most of this week. Gavin will be back next week, and we're going to start getting back in the flow of being together on shows. We each took some much-needed vacations over the last couple months and got to recharge our batteries a little bit, but we'll be back together in full force here pretty soon. But this game, the Knicks lose 119 to 108 to the Sixers, and they look pretty good for parts of this game. You know, they entered the half with a lead. They led by double digits at times. Like, things looked pretty good, but ultimately they didn't come through with the win. And I think, you know, a number of people pointed this out, like on Twitter. I know my buddy Schwinny Poo pointed this out on Twitter, that the staggering of Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, or lack thereof, is really costing this team in many ways. And you know, I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned from a game like this when you have a team like the Sixers that do just that to great effect with two MVP caliber players, or at least at one time MVP caliber players, in James Harden and Joel Embiid. But I want to first, you know, give Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle their props for this game. I mean, they were both great. Brunson had 20 points in the first quarter, finished with 30 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists on 12 and 19 shooting. Clearly still kind of riding the high of still being in Philly. I would assume he's been there for the last few days. Being in Philly, getting his jersey retired at Villanova the other day, which, yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it during the Hart pod, but the reaction where he learned that Josh Hart got traded to the Knicks was at his jersey retirement ceremony. So congrats to Jalen Brunson for that achievement. That's clearly a big deal. Getting your number retired anywhere is a big deal, but you know, somewhere where you won a national championship and all that, certainly a huge honor. Maybe someday we'll see his jersey number up in the rafters for the Knicks. Might take a championship to make that happen, but who knows? But both Randle too just was fantastic. 30 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, shot 11 to 20 for him. I think he was 5 of 11 from 3. For whatever reason, I didn't write that down, but you know, good volume shooting from 3, keeping the defense honest as usual. And both of them are just so vital to the offense working right now. It makes it that much more bizarre that Tibbs still, even with a shortened rotation, still feels the need to keep them on the floor at the same time for most of their minutes. It seems like they almost sub in and out in tandem, which doesn't make a ton of sense when it's your 2 best players on the team. You really, again, don't have to look much further than right across the floor. The Sixers often have Joel Embiid and James Harden out there solo, and it works to great effect. Like, you see it, you know, in the way that Embiid is able to cook a guy, you know, like in this game, you know, in a normal game against the Knicks, let's say, Mitchell Robinson has proven to be pretty decent at defending Joel Embiid, and yet the Sixers will time things out so that Joel Embiid gets some minutes against like the Isaiah Hartensteins of the world or the Jericho Simses of the world, which both of them I think did as well as they possibly could have in this game, particularly Sims. But there's smart strategy to trying to game plan having one of your best players stay out there against the other team's not best players. And also pulling one of your players earlier and, having them be able to come back earlier to close a half. And what's so weird to me about Tibbs not doing this anymore is that he used to. This was a thing. I can remember specifically doing podcasts about this and talking about how smart it was back in 2020 to 21. Tibbs used to, and this was, Julius Randle was the offensive option in 2020 to 21. But Tibbs would sub out Randle first. He would sub Randle out like with 6-7 minutes sometimes to go in the first quarter and in the third quarter. And it was to great effect. Like he would sub them out early, he would sub Randle out early, get Obi Toppin in there, let RJ Barrett run things with the second unit for a little bit. And RJ did a great job, and RJ would usually play the whole first quarter. And then Randle would get to come in like a couple minutes into the second quarter and the fourth quarter, and then close out the rest of that quarter with a ton of rest on his legs, and would generally look pretty good to close games, and that was like a thing. Now the Knicks find themselves with more talent than they had at that time. And so there's even more cushion to split up Brunson and Randle, and yet they're not. And it's just so bizarre to me. Like the fact that Tibbs had this figured out 2 years ago and was using it so well, and now all of a sudden can't figure this out is kind of bizarre to me because now you're in a position where you can have RJ Barrett out there still. And, he seems to, I have some great stats for the second segment to kind of get into here. But like RJ plays his best when he's with just one of those two individually. And Randle and Brunson seem to just kind of positively affect the game no matter who they're playing with. So why not split them up more? Like I think a really easy way to go about it, since Immanuel Quickley has been your best bench player, why not have Brunson take on that role like what Randle was doing 2 years ago, or play it by ear in any given game, right? Like we saw in this one, Brunson had 20 points in the first quarter. Obviously, you don't want to pull him out when he's super hot. Okay, fine. So pull out Randle first in this particular game and have Randle come out. And then, if Randle is doing his thing that he normally does, where he scores like 15 points in the first quarter, take Brunson out first and put Immanuel Quickley in. It doesn't seem that hard to me to make this happen. And yet Tibbs makes it seem really hard and always seems to feel like he has to approach subs short of like foul trouble. He approaches subs in every single game exactly the same way. And that's the problem. Like in the NBA, you cannot just like go and paint by numbers and, just show up to work. Like this is not like a clock in, clock out, enter data in spreadsheets kind of job. You know what I mean? This is a coach in the NBA is all about being adaptable. And Tibbs is not often adaptable. He sticks to his script of, this is when guys come out. This is when they go back in. This is the units that are going to play together. These are the players that are going to play together. And it's so weird. I wonder if it maybe comes with his job being on the hot seat, him being on the hot seat with his job status. But it seems like he starts to figure this out a little bit. Like we'll start to see a little more staggering and like different players like closing games, whoever's like hot, whatever. And then all of a sudden he'll just go back to his worst tendencies and just go back to this super scripted, super like by the book, like these guys are going to play this much, period. That's it. Like in this game, it seemed like he was like, okay, Brunson and Randle are going to play the whole first quarter, and that's that. And then they're going to sit to start the second quarter, and they're going to come back in with like 4 minutes left to close the half. And that's just poor minutes management too. I mean, it's not usually a great idea to like wear guys down in the first quarter and then do that. But besides the point, when he subs them out in tandem like that, it just creates this power vacuum that the other team then can take advantage of, where all of a sudden the two best players for the Knicks are out and the other team has this perfect opportunity to pounce and narrow a lead or whatever, which is exactly what the Sixers did multiple times in this game. First in the second quarter where they brought it brought the deficit much closer after the Knicks had a great first quarter behind Brunson. And then in the second half, obviously they closed the gap and took the lead and then just never looked back and beat the Knicks. So that's something that definitely has to change. But I have some numbers that would really support this being a good idea for the Knicks as well. So I'll get to that in the next segment. But first, I do just have to remind you guys that today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Try it free for 30 days. That's enough time to try and completely forget about a subscription or service. Before you know it, you're paying for a subscription you don't use every single month. And with Rocket Money, you can change that with a few quick taps. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about, like that streaming service you bought to watch just one show or that free trial you never even used. Rocket Money will quickly and easily identify your subscriptions for you so you can stop paying for the ones you don't want. Simply find the subscription you don't want and press cancel, and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. There's no more long hold times with customer service or tedious emailing back and forth. Rocket Money makes canceling subscriptions as easy as a click of a button. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 a year. And not only that, I've used Rocket Money and they'll renegotiate bills for you too. So, like my internet bill was getting way too high. So I said, "Can you guys make it lower for me?" They called Comcast on my behalf and negotiated a lower bill for me. And now I've saved like a good amount of money over the life of my subscription. So it's pretty fantastic. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba. rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba. All right, and I'm back to continue talking about this Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson thing. And here is a thing that I have learned from looking at some stats. Numbers would suggest that it is a good idea to split up Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. Now, this is not because they are bad together. They they actually are a pretty good pairing, all things considered, but it's more due to the fact that the highest paid guys on the team, the trio of Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, and RJ Barrett, don't actually play super great together and tend to play better with one another than they do as a collective unit. So, like, having two of them on the floor at any given time tends to be better than having all three of them on the floor at once, which seems to be more the Tibbs MO. Uh, that is illustrated by the fact that they have played over 1,100 minutes together as a three-man unit this year. That's by far the most on the team for any three-man unit. And yet they are posting a minus 4.3 net rating over those 1,100 plus minutes. For those of you that don't know, a net rating is essentially how many points you score versus how many points that you give up over the course of 100 possessions. So every 100 possessions, the Knicks give up 4.3 points more, or like it's a 4.3 net difference in the red for the Knicks when those three play together. And then if you look at, so this is a little interesting. So these are per NBA stats, where these stats come from. But if you look at Brunson and RJ together as a two-man unit, that number goes to minus 2.3 instead of minus 4.3. Then if you look at Brunson and Randle together, that number goes down to a minus 1.8 instead of a minus 4.3 with all three of them together. Then if you look at just RJ and Randle as a unit, it goes down to minus 2.2 instead of minus 4.3. So all that is to say, like, the Knicks get pretty universally like 2 points per 100 possessions better with just the two guys playing together versus all three of them. And the thing with those numbers too is that still, those two-man unit numbers between those guys are still factoring in the three-man unit times as well. So those numbers should, in theory, get even better if it's just those two on the floor together. So then I went to cleaning the glass and looked up some other numbers here. So there's a large number of units that you can look at and get those same net rating numbers and see, okay, like, what are some some units out there that don't include one of these guys. So I ran some filters where I was like, okay, with Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson on and RJ Barrett off, what are some lineups, and et cetera, with all these guys and all the 2-man combinations minus the third guy. So the starters minus RJ Barrett plus Immanuel Quickley, so that's including Mitchell Robinson as the starter, uh, are a plus 5.9 in net rating. So that's a big improvement from the minus 4.3 that we see from the Brunson, RJ, and Randle trio as a unit. So that's a pretty big deal. The starters with Hartenstein in place of Mitch minus RJ plus Immanuel Quickley are a plus 13.9. That's even better, like by far. So, I mean, there's not a ton of data with that second number, but the first number has quite a bit of data behind it. And so to be a plus 5.9 without RJ Barrett there tells me, like, you know, yes, that proves exactly what we think, which is that Brunson and Randle are really good together. And Immanuel Quickley's having a great year too. But that's not necessarily to say that RJ Barrett is not providing positive value in different contexts, right? So unfortunately, these next two things I'm going to bring up have a relatively small amount of data associated with them because of the fact that Tibbs just doesn't do it, does not play Brunson without Randle. But let's just look at a couple things anyway. So I ran a search for what are some lineups with Brunson and RJ on and Julius Randle off. And there's a bunch of little lineups that have only had like 1-2 possessions, probably like just times when Randle was getting ready to sub in and stuff like that. So I'm not going to count those. But when I ran that, so like Brunson and RJ on, Randle off, there's 2 bench lineups that are more than 30 points per 100 possessions in the positive. That is insane. 30 points per 100 possessions net rating in the positive. They're like a plus 30. I think one was like a plus 35 and the other was like a plus 31, which is absolutely insane. So Jalen Brunson, Immanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin, and either Isaiah Hartenstein or Jericho Sims. Those 2 lineups were a plus 30. And between the 2 of those lineups, you had about 125 possessions total to show you that those are working. So that sort of supports my theory, right? What I just said in the first segment. Why would you not have Jalen Brunson go out there with, like, go out first at any given game? Like, again, Randle is normally the one that goes crazy in the first quarter. So why not have Brunson sub out first, like you used to do with Randle back in 2021, and then bring Brunson back in earlier in the second quarter and have him play with the bench unit, where clearly when he plays with the bench unit with RJ Barrett and with, other various bench guys like Quickley and Obi Toppin and, Hartenstein, they have great success together. So why not try that out a little more and let Brunson have some more time against opposing teams' second units and let him really just feast and set up his teammates and give them opportunities against the other team's bench. Doesn't make much sense to not utilize that to me. And yet here we are. So then again, sort of annoyingly small amount of info to go off of here, but with RJ and Randle both on the court and Brunson off, there's 2 lineups that could probably be used a lot that are positive. So Immanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, RJ, Randle, and Jericho Sims is a plus 9.4 in 37 possessions this year. So that suggests to me, again, supports this idea that Jalen Brunson should be getting subbed out earlier and being the first guy to leave the floor, which, maybe you say, oh, that's counterintuitive. He's the floor general. He's blah, blah. But Immanuel Quickley's been so good that you can insert him in there and that lineup's not going to skip a beat. And in fact, in some ways gets a little better because Quickley will defer to RJ and Randle a little more. I'm not saying like Brunson doesn't defer to guys, but he's generally expected to be running the show. Whereas then you can have this lineup where you still have RJ and Randle out there, just sub Immanuel Quickley in, and there's still a huge positive. So that's one lineup to look at. Then another sort of benchy lineup, Deuce, Quickley, RJ, Randle, and Hartenstein are plus 5.9 in 67 possessions together. So 2 really good lineups. There are 2 ones that I think if Tibbs just opened up his mind a little bit to the idea of subbing Brunson out earlier in games, And again, this game is like the worst possible example for that, but that's more a case for flexibility than anything. But like, you know, normally Brunson will start the game well, but usually Randle is sort of the focal point early in games. So why not, take advantage of that and get Brunson a little rest early and then let him come in and really have his moment in the second earlier in the second and fourth quarters. Seems pretty no brainer to me, but I don't know. I don't know why Tibbs opposes the idea of splitting Julius and Brunson up so much, even with a shortened rotation. But I think it's pretty clear if you just go off those numbers I just mentioned. This seems like a home run, and literally every other team with 2 stars does it all the time. So I don't know. But I'm going to come back in the final segment and do a little housekeeping. There was some people getting really mad online about RJ Barrett subbing in for Immanuel Quickley late in this game. I don't think that was a huge issue. However, I do think that maybe another player should have been subbed out. So we'll talk about that in a sec. Talk about some of the problems that adding Josh Hart to this could provide, given that there's already so much controversy about who should be closing games or whatever. And talk a little bit about Jericho Sims and give him some props for having a pretty good close against Joel Embiid. But first, I gotta remind you guys, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And this year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. And I'm super looking forward to the Super Bowl and to placing some same game parlays. It's my absolute favorite thing. I'm going to bet on lots of yards from Mahomes and lots of yards from Hurts and maybe a Kelsey touchdown at some point. Perhaps some defensive things. They also offer all kinds of weird props for the Super Bowl. So I'm going to make an absolutely preposterous same game parlay ticket. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And best of all, you get paid your winnings instantly. That's why I was using FanDuel Sportsbook before I was paid to, and even when we had a different sponsor as of like a month ago. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/locked on to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, and back to finish talking up here. So, as far as this game, I saw some people getting a little bit mad about RJ coming in for Immanuel Quickley late, and I think in the case of this particular game, maybe Quentin Grimes should have been the one to come out late in this game. And I'm not like crapping on Grimes or his performance or anything, but I think that more has to do with the fact that he was not doing anything so absurdly good that it made me think that he deserved to be out there more than Quickley and RJ. So Quickley ends this game with 13 points on 5 of 8 shooting, had 3 assists. RJ had 19 points on 7 of 16 shooting, shot 3 of 5 from 3, had 3 rebounds, 2 assists. And shortly after getting subbed in late, he made a pretty decently big 3, So like he wasn't like not providing value out there. I just thought both those guys had really good games. They probably earned the right to be on the floor to close. Grimes played like 37 minutes, and I don't know. I guess my main thing with him in this game was he wasn't providing huge value on offense. Um, I don't think that I'm going to look at the box score because I didn't write it down. Yeah, he shot 3 of 7 overall and 0 of 4 from 3. I mean, a lot of his utility is shooting the 3 ball, and he's been, I mean, to his credit, he's been clutch as hell lately, and so has deserved to close plenty of games here, but ultimately was not having his best game. And also, I just didn't feel like, the thing with Grimes is that sometimes he can make up for not having a great offensive game by just being so above and beyond better on defense that he's like, it makes it like, okay, you got to play this guy. I didn't think that he was affecting the game so much on defense that it made sense to keep him out there over the other 2 guys. And, RJ was not exactly like a dynamo on defense either, but Quickley was having a good defensive game, certainly good enough that I would have said, like, I think Quickley was giving James Harden more trouble than like Grimes was, for example. So I don't know. It didn't make much sense to me to not have those 2 close instead of Grimes, and Grimes play like, I think, the third most minutes behind. Oh, no, he played more minutes than Julius Randle and just behind Jalen Brunson. It didn't make a ton of sense to me in this game when you have Immanuel Quickley and RJ both playing a shade under 30. I just think it would have made more sense to have all three of those guys, or to have, sorry, RJ and Quickley out there with Brunson and Randle and, whomever you wanted to put out there at center to close. I thought Sims was pretty good. So, that would have probably been my closing lineup. But unfortunately, I don't think these problems are going to get too much easier as far as who to play between the like guard wing guys on the Knicks. You're going to be involving Josh Hart in this mix. There was a quote from Tom Thibodeau about how he's going to entertain running Hart out there as the 4 at times, which I'll believe it when I see it. I can't see Tibbs ever putting a 6'4" guy out there at the 4, especially when he has a guy in RJ Barrett who has better size and has proven to be able to play the 4 for spot minutes. But it is what it is. So I don't know if that means that we should be more worried about Obi Toppin completely losing his role to make room for Josh Hart or what, but I don't know. It's going to create some interesting things to keep an eye on here. My hope is that, I mean, as much as I like Deuce McBride, he'll just take Deuce McBride's minutes and maybe shave some off of Quentin Grimes' minutes, maybe a little off RJ's as well. But the who should be closing debate is not going to get any easier because they're clearly all very talented and all are going to have games where you think, I think this guy should be closing, and they're not going to end up closing. Last thing that I'll shout out, pretty short final segment. There was only so much housekeeping. I just wanted to get on my soapbox about the Julius and Brunson thing mostly, but I thought Jericho Sims had a pretty good game. It was a learning experience for him, but I thought that he did pretty admirably against Joel Embiid. He really stuck with him man to man. I thought that he was doing a good job of shifting his feet and not letting Embiid get too deep without resistance. But as Clyde noted, I think the biggest issue was he just kept reaching, and that led to some fouls and some unfortunate, Joel Embiid free throw attempts. What did Embiid end with free throw attempts? Embiid had 10, which is actually not that high for him, but I feel like a lot of those came from Jericho Sims just like playing picture perfect defense up until the point that he decided to stick his hand in and try to reach for the ball, and then Embiid just had those like scores mentality, like guard skills kick in, just be like, okay, time to move the ball through his hand and, like jack up a shot here and get a foul call. And he did, like, without fail every time, because Joel Embiid is like right now probably the best scorer in the NBA. So yeah, I think I think that Sims just needs to tighten things up a little bit, but all in all looked really good against a for real MVP candidate right now. So that's good. I do think he could also use like Mitchell Robinson's go-go gadget arms would have come in handy for all of Joel Embiid's mid-range shots, because he had some issues with where Embiid would be out in the mid-range, and it would be a situation where if it was Mitch, he could camp the paint a little bit and protect against that person that was driving in before they kick it out to Embiid in the mid-range, and then kind of make up that ground. And Sims was trying to do the same thing, but he would contest Embiid's shot, but it wouldn't be a real contest. Like Embiid was getting it off totally clean. So I don't know. That's just a limitation of Sims as a player, and nothing's really going to fix that because you can't teach size, unfortunately. But all in all, I thought it was a good showing for him. But that's pretty much all I got on this game. So thanks for listening. And like I said, we'll be back a little more full strength next week with Gavin and I. And we'll have a recap for Monday morning. I think Gavin's actually going to go solo to break down what should be Josh Hart's first game tonight against Utah. So he'll have the deets on that. And then we'll, reconvene this coming week and be talking some Knicks and going all the way through the All-Star break and beyond with you guys. So thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you guys all soon. Peace out.